Hello, everybody. Happy Saturday again. Saturday sweep series. Wall Street Jesus, of course. And what a week it was. I had on some 90s a la club music on, throw me back into the good old days, my prime. Because that's what it kind of felt like on Friday, especially the early part of Friday's session that morning. When you had basically, especially what we were seeing flow-wise, people just tripping over themselves to own a big tech. And it was it started off a bit strange because it wasn't like it all happened gapped up and the chase usually starts pre-market. You get frustrated. That didn't happen. It was Amazon, and then people realize, oh, shit. They're going to want to own Facebook. They're going to want to own NVIDIA. They're going to want to own Baba. They're going to want to own all these things. And for day trading especially, if you just decided to take that aggressive approach early, like I said, for the morning, for the most part there Friday, there was some nice juice. And what we were seeing flow-wise, Friday morning, all right, you had the Amazon, the Google, they were gapping up nicely, lifting the whole group and stuff like that. But we started seeing flow-wise, we started to see that chase again. And we've been seeing that chase, especially more recent year, more than anything else. Every time there's a little soft patch in the market, and there's some selling, and people think, maybe the market has finally run out of juice. And I think they were looking at it as, all right, we're going into an earnings season, all right, a pretty big earnings season here. We know numbers are going to be good, that already, but at the same time, this market has rallied a decent amount into the, okay? So there's that chance of sell on the news. I mean, like Intel, okay, not so much with the Amazon. That was the beauty of that name. When it caught flow, Amazon looked like shit. Nobody wanted to own Amazon. But, you look at names like Intel, Microsoft. I mean, look at this thing. Let me X this out here. You into the quarter, and you say to yourself, risk-reward wise, it's not too appealing. All right, so you can get that sell on the news, even if it's a good number. So I think a lot of, and we were seeing it in stuff we were looking at, like I look at a chart, exposure, which gives you of how vested the hedge funds are, how confident they may be in the market, okay, whether they're all in or they've been taking profits. And prior to this last leg up here, hedge funds were completely out. So they were getting caught empty-handed. They had no exposure. Literally, almost like a put to call. You see, when hedge fund exposure is high, if you look at it as in the contrarian manner, which you that means that they're all in. And if that indicator is low, it tells us basically that they're not invested in the market, and you can get that. All right. So we were seeing that right around here with the market at high. So anytime you see sentiment like that where players think they're smarter than the actual market itself, usually backfires. Continued to see this little melt up here, then got a little bit choppy into the numbers, and then they got caught flat-footed. All right, they wanted in, and they wanted. When they want in a hurry, there's really, one vehicle that they utilize, especially these days more than ever, and that's they go in and start sweeping the living daylights, call side. And that's where we see, those of you who are members, we see that non-stop flow. Just sweeper after sweeper. And they're in size. All right. Some of them are small size, but just like an Uzi firing one after the other. And at the same time, you get algos setting off each other there. It's almost that panic buying. You know, we always hear panic selling. It's that panic buying that takes place. All right, so that's what we saw materialize in the Friday morning session. And like I said, if whether you're a day trader, swing trader, whatever it was a fun day, you know, especially in the morning. It was a great morning. We were playing a couple different names. It was almost like too much action, to be honest. You know, there was you had to pick and choose. You could have known everything. And basically, those things were catching flow. One, you know, some more than others, but everything was catching flow. Just to rattle off a couple names. Here's a name that, if you know they're getting behind this name, you know things are pretty hot. Twitter, all right? We start seeing them get aggressive, you know, call side in Twitter. I didn't trade it. A couple guys in the room did, but this thing had a really nice morning. You can see here, this is a 1 minute. Look at this move in Twitter. You know, you don't see a move like that in Twitter. And again, Twitter, same thing happened there, you know, for good reason. Twitter, quarter after quarter, has been miserable. They had actually a glimmer of hope this quarter. Wanted to own the name. All right, but other names that I participated in, Facebook was my favorite of the bunch, and I'll tell you why. Here's the Facebook rush. You know, right off the bat, you know, gave a little breather here and then highs, and then you can see that the afternoon from lunchtime on, they held their own. It wasn't too many pullbacks throughout, fades, but you know, the juice was gone. It was the morning on a lot of these things. Apple was another one. This was my biggest regret. Apple, it was slower to materialize, meaning they didn't come at it as aggressive as they did the Twitter, the Facebook, of the stuff. This started off slow, and then before you know it, if you even gave it a couple minutes to think about whether you should pull the trigger or not, the flow just exploded. I mean, just exploded into the afternoon. Okay. Also, Baba, not as much as the Facebook and the Twitter and maybe the Apple. But you could, again, you could just see it happening. And that's, again, I'm biased, but that's, for me, one of the best parts about flow. You know, it gives me, especially in the mornings, it gives me an idea of where the hot money is going to work. You know, so if they're going, and we've seen it many times, if FANG, how do we know if it's going to be dead, you know, for the most part of the day? Fine, Friday we had numbers, and that's a catalyst, but you don't know if these momentum players are going to get behind high beta, the FANG names. They may go to the banks. We saw it this past week. And the flow will pretty much guide you and give you an idea of where they're sweeping calls aggressively. And if they're doing that, a lot of, more than not, there's an amount of momentum there. All right, so like I said, Friday was great. You could have thrown a dart early in the morning. You had nice moves. Everybody, the most common phrase Friday morning was, "Oh, I sold too early." That was everybody's problem. All right, so I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. You can't complain about that. So some real nice juice. All right, but listen, aside from that, Friday's one day, and like I said, unless we turn into 1999-esque, yeah, more than that, you're not going to get days like that. All right, so you look to take advantage of them. You try, you know, after the day now, it's a new week next week. We got to try not to get our emotions and bias wrapped up, not expect the type of movement we saw Friday on anything we play next week. It could be a whole different can of worms, especially now that some of the sentiment stuff for the first time throughout this move, if you can believe it or not, I kid you not, the first time we're seeing some overheating bullish numbers coming out of sentiment. all right, on a short-term basis. And what I mean by that is a little breather, an intraday fade in the morning can wash that out. So for some of you swing traders, it's just up here you want to say to yourself, all right, listen, maybe I got some runners, maybe I got some positions I'm still holding on to. As far as new entries, I'm going to rein it in a little bit, wait for some sort of breather, some sort of fade, cleansing, nothing major, and then I could start. All right, and hopefully we got a big week of earnings out of the way. That was a huge week of earnings. So now, little by little, we're going to start to see some post-earnings flow. And that's so important because it'll give us an idea of, again, where the money may be rotating. Or, a cautionary sign would be we're not seeing any quality flow out there. And that would tell us that even though the market looks great, the economy looks great, everything, the smart money out there is not interested up here. Okay, and a lot of times what will happen, not immediately, but we still may grind up, melt up in a sense, but eventually you get that flush that will wipe out some of the grind. All right, one thing to always keep an eye on, and I mentioned this on Twitter yesterday, I always get questions about the put buying, okay, and I get it. It would be a lot easier if every put buyer meant something, and every call buyer meant something, and you almost roll on either direction of the market. But that's not realistic. All right, for me, and throughout my experience, the call buying tells me everything I need to know. If I don't see them aggressively buying stuff on the call side, that would show me, that would tell me, show me a little bit of more caution than some protection in a name like, let's say, Intel, that's been up every day with call buying every day into numbers. That in a bull market, that tells you nothing. The biggest bull on the street, he could be so bullish, Intel, it's sickening, and still buy a block of puts because he don't want to liquidate his position into the quarter. So that would be a terrible read if you go off, especially, I see a lot of people get on social media, they get wrapped up into these just hit blocks, right? You see one guy, he buys $500,000 worth of puts, it's one block and you never see him again. That's got protection written all over it. As we've been talking about on this webinar, you want to see when they keep coming, when they show that degenerate emotion, where they really want something. That's the type of action you want to get behind. That's the type of buying or the type of order flow that speaks volumes to me. One block, even on the call side, one block means nothing during earnings season. So that's, I wanted to hit on that early because I get that question a lot. Is there any put buying? Is there anything out of flow that would show any caution right now? And there isn't. There isn't. There's earnings flow for the most part. That's what we've been seeing for obvious reasons. There's protection out there. We've seen decent amount of protection in ETFs. SMH, the semis, we've seen block put buyers, throughout. And as you can see, that means hasn't made a dent in the ETF, thing just continues to push higher. But when you see charts like this, them buying names in that space, logically, if they're buying the names aggressively, a block of puts more than likely means it's somebody who owns a little more semis than he would like into earnings and needs to protect some. All right, so we're seeing some put buying in ETFs. We're also seeing call buying in ETFs. It's been pretty mixed depending on the day. But that's earnings flow. That's just typical earnings. All right, so as we come out of this, and again, a good example would be if there's no action out there that excites me, if there's no quality action, if it's just momentum type sweepers, repeat sweepers looking to take advantage of the same hot names, and there's no quality paper out there, that for me would be a sign that maybe things need to slow down to attract that aggressive buying to come back in. All right, so that's something I'd be looking for. And again, there's no way to see that during earnings season because there's just a ton of flow. It's a day-by-day thing. Once we get done, we're done with a big week here. The banks are done. So from this point, the flow should get a lot cleaner, not just on a day-by-day basis, but through stretches, weeks, months, and we'll get a clearer picture of where we might be headed. But other than that, I mean, let's talk about the Amazon just to get it away, okay? It's almost like, I know probably some of you may be sick of hearing it, especially if you didn't own it. If you owned it, you can't get enough of it. The beauty of the Amazon situation was it wasn't even an earnings play, okay? That's what I think a lot of traders are forgetting, that either played the name or scratching their heads why they didn't play the name. We went over several examples of how to trade through earnings season. If you're not an earnings player, okay, you don't have success playing earnings, and you want to figure out a way to navigate around it, because you need to. It's either you're totally on the sidelines as a swing trader, or you got to figure out a way to navigate around earnings, because again, you can't manage your risk, and it's a crapshoot. All right, so we spoke about when you see a name, and an Amazon is a perfect example, because if you guys are members, you've heard this come out of my mouth since that Amazon action we saw. If you're not members, you probably heard me say it. That Amazon sweeper was the biggest opening sweep I've ever seen. I've ever seen. Okay? When you see a name like that catch action, and you're a believer in flow, like a lot of us are, that's something you have to look to take advantage of. Okay? Whether you like the stock or not, in my opinion, in my eyes, it's irrelevant. Because if you're a member and you're in the room for flow, you have to make a play on Amazon some way, somehow. Okay? And look to take advantage of that. It's special. Win or lose, it's special. Even if it's a loser, you should be okay with losing on action like that. All right, so what happened was it caught action early October, and it wasn't an earnings play. A lot of the earnings action will come, right around the dates, and it's pretty obvious when you see earnings flow. We're seeing a lot of it now. We're seeing it in Facebook. We're seeing it in all those names. But Amazon it wasn't earnings flow technically, okay? So the way that you could have played it, even if you weren't an earnings player, and a lot of members did, was you look for an entry around that spot, right? And if you can have your cake and eat it too, you get a move pre-earnings, double move pre-earnings, take off risk, and at the least, leave a runner. Okay, and here's the perfect example of why. It was a fantastic trade. Without earnings, it was a score off that action. All right, but again, when you see that type of sweeper activity, it wasn't just that one bazooka. We keep forgetting it wasn't that one bazooka. There was decent sweeper activity around that bazooka as well. It pays to leave a runner, and you're able to catch this with a lot less risk. You'll give back some profits because you left a runner if it shit the bed off earnings, but you're able to catch the score. All right, and I made the comment, a lot of members know I'm anti-earnings. Okay, they know. It's to the point where they won't even ask me about an earnings play if they know it's an earnings play. But I made the comment that if you're going to play earnings anyway, right? I mean, I run my mouth and badmouth earnings plays all day long, and there's people in the room, a lot of them, who continue to play earnings. They don't give a shit about what I say. So I just had to make the point that if you play earnings anyway, and you don't own Amazon into earnings, you need your head examined. I mean, but that made sense, right? If you're going to play all the other nonsense and roll the dice into earnings, and you're not going to look to have some exposure into the Amazon quarter off the best looking sweep we've ever, yeah, that's a head scratcher to me. So it is what it is. But that type, if you guys who know me off Twitter, we didn't have the Steamroom back then, there's always action that you continuously talk about. Like, you guys know Maz on Twitter, some of you do anyhow. We always talk about the Amazon leaps 2 years ago. Like, that was the Bill Miller leaps at $300. You know, that was action that we knew at that time too. We were going to remember forever, okay? And this Amazon sweeper was category. He was in that category. You know, granted, in a name that doesn't catch sweeper activity like that, it'd be one thing if it was Facebook, Apple, Micron, right? That catch missiles constantly. Amazon, we get excited when somebody sweeps, you know, a $200,000 sweeper in Amazon, and we're so that's the Amazon story. But I want people to understand it wasn't just an earnings play. It was a beautiful thing. From where he hit it spot-wise, okay, and you guys hear me talk about that constantly, and I think as a swing trader, you need to pay attention to it because it's huge. And what I mean by that is it's easy for people to buy names that are moving higher. It's easy, okay? It's easy to get bulled up behind strong names. But when you see the professionals out there, as I refer to them, the Sharpies, the smart money out there, aggressively get behind a name in size when it doesn't look its best, that's when I feel you need to pay attention the most. And that doesn't mean in names that are crashing. Okay, there's an in-between. You know, some names just consolidate and breathe and shake people out. That's the way the market works. You know, Amazon, when it caught that action, nobody really even wanted to be bothered with Amazon. You know, it was a name people didn't want. I know for, you know, the feedback I was getting on Twitter, etc., nobody was excited off that order. Nobody wanted to play Amazon off that order because she was weak, choppy, underperforming. But that, to me, that's the beauty of sweeper activity, especially significant sweeper activity, because it's an indicator that there's a high probability that that may change, right? That's the way I look at all these things. It's not a crystal ball. It's not making a prediction. I mean, I look at the sweeper activity, all the sweeper activity, as a high probability of momentum coming into the name, right? So if it's aggressive put activity and they're getting aggressive, that tells me there's a high probability that there might be some selling pressure in the name. Call side, the total opposite. So when a stock is in some consolidation or some sort of downtrend, let's say, but you know, it's a solid name, has been strong, just breathing, that's the best of the best. That's the goods right there. You know, it doesn't have to be knife catching. I understand, you know, if you don't want to catch a knife, I get it. You know, I don't like that either. I don't like stocks that are bleeding to death, you know, because a lot of times even sweepers will get run over the short term. You know, that's why you need some time there. But when a stock's just breathing, you know, no one's paying attention, that's where I think you have an edge, where they're giving you a heads up that things may change. All right, so from that to, again, the move into, you know, prior to numbers, Then what about this shake and bake here? This is another beautiful thing. You know, you look here like this is something I'm talking about. So here's the move here, right? And you can see, you know, this thing went up literally almost every day after that activity. Every day. So it kind of got stretched. And I remember saying to myself, you don't want this thing stretched into numbers. You know, you don't want that thing stretched into numbers. It'd be picture perfect if there was some sort of breather here. And whoop, they gave it. And you know what was funny? They bought the breather. Now, again, we don't know. That could have been earnings flow, obviously. But they bought the breather. All right, so that's the Amazon story. And again, it's not bragging winners or anything else. I just wanted to bring out the point that if you're against earnings, there was a way to play it without breaking your rules per se. And that would have been leaving a runner off the money you made before earnings came about. All right, so let me quickly go over some names just in general, and then we could shoot over some of the Friday action and stuff like that. So we spoke about Twitter. Twitter had some buying. Then you had some chase after the quarter. There's some positive news out of there. You know, court action Friday as well with everything else. Another solid name, this ADSK, and this is something else that might happen maybe next week. We may see them revisit that underbelly of tech, which we talk about a lot and have been talking about on these webinars. You know, and that's a couple names I'm going to go over now. This ADSK, this is a little bit fried. They bought off this dip here. It was some real nice action. This thing continues to go. We all know the Adobe. That actually caught some news as well. What a rocket in that thing. And I think we might have, spoke about the Adobe. But here's the interesting thing about Adobe here. Let me see. Where am I? I'll show you in the search. Hold on. I got to move this. Okay. So I'm going to show you Adobe. Adobe. Like, that's all there is. So you got to go back to, you know, 926 when it caught that initial bet, September 26th, $1 million on the sweep. You know, Adobe catches action like this. A lot of times there's small sweeps that won't even hit this board, and we trade them. But you can see here, heavy-duty action, right? They come back into the fade again, which you want to see, after a nice move, hit it for another $500,000, and then now they've been hit it. Oh, this is another one. They've even been hitting it higher. So 145 in the 149s. That thing has just exploded. 177 on this Adobe. Is that nuts? So you had the ADSK, the Adobe's looking good. CRM showing a little bit of leg last week. November 10th weekly calls, and then they were rolling some of those out to monthlies late in the week. So, you know, these are the names I'm referring to some of the underbelly that might trickle down to after the big ones got annihilated. Here's some names on Friday. You guys probably know these names. CRUS. You guys know that one, I'm sure. That caught action. What sucks, it was up big when it caught the action. You know, we'll look at it. I'll show you the action when we go over the names. Cree is another one that actually had a big move recently. I think it might have been earnings related, right? Yeah, earnings. There's the E. Oh, yeah, so they beat the street by a penny, it looks like here, and the stock had a huge day. So this caught some Jan action. We'll look at that in a little bit. Here's a name, too, that has earnings coming up. Hasn't really gotten going yet. Looked like here it was going to get loose, then had another little pullback. but then a nice day on Friday. You got earnings coming up here now, so it's something you're going to have to navigate around. But some action in the December calls, which this is pretty much, it might be a little bit higher than where they hit it initially. This thing can move, though. It can move. Here's another one, NTNX. Right? Is this tech? I think this is tech. This caught some activity. A couple of guys in the room had this one. So, keep an eye on some of the underbelly of tech there. Want to see if it trickles down. And then we just had hot names in general. And I'll be dead straight with you guys. A lot of action that earnings got in the way of. And it frustrated me. It frustrated a lot of members. Let's go to a hot name anyway first to start off. Look at this OSTK. I'm sure a lot of you guys have played it. Let me blow up this chart so you can see it. So the story here in this OSTK, we start seeing sweeper activity in this name, okay? And I'm like, all right, there's some unusual call sweeper activity, whatever. Maybe they're looking for a short squeeze. I'm asking people in the room, what do they do? Overstock.com, blah, blah, blah. Then try to shorten the story a bit. They start, now I see some size buying coming in. So I'm saying to myself, what the hell's going on now? So a couple members dig into the story a little bit. They find out that they take Bitcoin and they keep a piece of the sale. That effect. All right. So, I guess on the Bitcoin frenzy, maybe anything with the word Bitcoin in it, is catching a little heat, right? Then even more action comes in, and now it's pretty evident something bigger is going on there behind the scenes. We may not know it, but the way they're buying this thing, there's something bigger than they're just keeping some of the Bitcoin sales. Okay, and make a long story short, they have or are in the process of setting up some sort of trading platform or something in relation to Bitcoin. All right, so the flow was before the news, and you guys got to see the flow coming into this thing. Let me even recently, you've probably seen me post some flow. Let me try to shorten this list. Oh, all right. All right, so you got, this was early August. So you could see, it's seeing some action in the teens, right? Like here, December, small sweep, $18. Then you can see, look, the size starts picking up. Now it's, $5 higher, and they're aggressively sweeping in bigger size, December 25s. Then you got a $400,000 sweeper here on 9/7. Then on September 27th, another 200 grand. Now the stock's 29. And look at this recent action here. Look at this action just recently. 10/24. You got, forget the block. I don't even care about the block. A December 40 sweeper for $500,000. At 37, they started in the teens, and they're sweeping 37. Was there any before that? I can't go back anymore. So a couple members caught this this past week, just trading off the heat because this thing has come a long way. But you figure when you see size like that, you're going to get some juice. Hold on. Can you guys hear me now? All right. Yeah, I don't know. Something popped up to up, and now it shut the audio off, and all I hear is beeping on my end. But you guys can hear me now, okay? All right. Thank God I was looking at you guys. I'd be talking to myself for all day. This only happens to me. All right. So yeah, I was talking about the Dynergy. You can see here. Here's a good example, guys. There's just nothing. If you're members, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like if Dynergy didn't have earnings, it was something to look at. It was definitely something to look at. Because look at this flow right here. This day. So again, not just one order. Okay, you got a sweeper here, nice size, 2 size blocks. You know, that's on 10/23. So earnings were November 1st, early November, November 1st, November 7th. So now that's where it gets tricky. Unlike the Amazon, that's where it gets tricky. You know, is it earnings? Is it not? There's other flow out there. Maybe we pass. And of course, she catches news. But that's all part of earnings that you can't let it frustrate you. It's going to happen. This other one was this Axta, which a couple guys and again members have owned in the past off sweeper activity. This catches an unusual sweeper, and they catch buyout news. Amazing. You know, you run into these things once every 6 months. You get 2 of these in a week, and really nobody had them because of earnings. So, you know, sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. So it's just part of the game here. I'll give you an example of earnings, just not to deviate completely from what we were talking about. Here's a name, all right? MDLZ has seen some decent flow here, okay? Right here, actually probably a little bit higher than where it is now. And she has earnings coming up. All the action catches earnings. So here's a prime example. You know, a lot of members, I guess, like the name or like the action in the name for good reason, but it's an earnings play. I mean, technically, it's an earnings play. So you can try and navigate earnings. You don't have much time. Unlike the Amazon, again, you don't have much time. So basically, you're looking to trade off Jan flow a week. You know, is it worth it? That's for you to decide. But this, again, this is a perfect example of why you hear me curse out earnings constantly. Yeah, I can't, I always have to take it, this is what I say, I always have to take it down a notch when it's earnings action, always. Okay, so if it doesn't catch earnings, it's top shelf flow that you should be confident about. If it catches earnings, even though the buying has looked solid, it's got to come down a notch. It's got to come down a notch. Here's a name of it that we saw Friday. That's not earnings action. Okay, so this would qualify as a solid setup. Okay, just again, the simple fact, if this name caught earnings, I don't even know if I mention it right now. This is Ryder, by the way. Transportation. I'll get to the action. I'll show you. They sold puts to buy calls in this name. They did it once before at cheaper levels. I think it was in this little mosh pit. Did a little bit of nothing for a while and then exploded out of it. And right here, Friday, a lot of us day traded it too because the action was so sharp. They sold some puts to buy some December calls in Ryder. R is the symbol. This is what it looks like. You know, been a pretty strong name here, like a lot of the transportation names. December 85s, Brent is saying, yeah. So they sold November puts to buy December calls. So, this is an unusual name to catch action just in general. It was decent size. The call buyer opened the largest position of open interest. Okay, in simple English, out of all the positions sitting in open interest right now, that Friday buyer is going to sit atop the whole open interest. Okay, so the buyer itself was noteworthy. And then right after that order came in, he sold puts. All right, so, and you guys are aware selling puts is extremely bullish because it's a high risk trade, especially when you're selling them naked, obviously. And that's pretty much saying he thinks or he feels at cheaper levels, he's willing to own this thing. It shows a lot. It shows high confidence. And when you put the two together, you see some call buying and put selling. That's a powerful combo. See, what happens is if we just see put selling, you're not sure of the upside. So it's tough to make a play on. In other words, he's selling puts. He feels like this stock has bottomed or doesn't have much more downside. Otherwise, he's willing to own it. So you're not sure about the upside, though, right? Because he just feels the downside may be limited. It's not really telling you too much about how much upside there will be. A lot of times there's upside anyway, but it's hard to get a read off the order. When they sell the puts to finance calls, that tells you he's looking for the double whammy there. All right, so that was, believe it or not too much action clean out there because we're in earnings season. That's one of the better names. And that caught action Friday. For some of you who are looking to buy dips in biotech, we saw one name in particular, Bristol Myers. Bristol Myers. What a bloodbath in some of these things. This is not even that bad compared to some of the others. So Bristol Myers, March action. So if you're looking to make a play in Bristol Myers, I would make sure I have enough time. I don't care what other flow I see around it. For me, I would go with March. If you may not need that much time, depending on what you're looking for. But that's the way to play these things. And the good thing you can see here on the top. So, and earnings are out of the way, right, Bristol Myers, so you don't have to worry about earnings flow in that. So it was this past week. So two size sweeps, two really good-looking sweeps, both March. And you got the 50, here's the one I like right here, the 57.5. So he went in the money there, and it tells you he's got some confidence in that trade. He's got some confidence. And again, he's going out far enough, right? So you can't be, here's the problem, you can't get too wrapped up in what takes place over the next week or month when looking at this. I know it's tough, but if you're making a play on a name like this, that's the type of flow this is. You can't get wrapped up. It's all noise. It really is noise. What happens over the extreme short term. As a matter of fact, another smart way to play this is put on, a piece. And if you have the luxury of this thing sitting around or maybe getting a bit cheaper, just by sitting around, it may get cheaper on the option end, you can add to it. And if it doesn't and just runs away, kind of like that Wells Fargo did. Remember the Wells Fargo action? Hold on, let me erase this. I'll give you an example of what to compare it to. Let me get to the room here. Where am I? Just to get an idea. All right. So that, and this way you play for two approaches. Wells Fargo, the sweeps. Or where were they, these sweeps? There was, oh, here they are, right? There it is. This is the Wells Fargo action. Okay, so hold on one second. I want to get the right date so I can show you exactly. Hear me okay? I hear beeping, but I'm just not going to pay attention to it. I don't know what it's beeping about, but you guys still hear me, right? I don't know why I hear that beep, and this is frustrating me. All right, so on 9/7, okay, early September, 9/7, they came in, and you see what they hit June of next year. So similar. They went out even further. But you see the size, two sweepers, big size there. Let me get to this. Look at this. Hold on. All right. Wells Fargo, 9/7. Yep. So 9/7. So here, it was right on this day here. That's where the two sweepers hit. So you can see it actually tried to flush lows again the next day, but didn't. And then she was just gone. So, you know, you didn't need June per se, right, to see the move. And you could possibly still be holding them if you played them and not worry about any other dips. But, you know, it doesn't always happen like this. It doesn't always happen like this. You know, a lot of times they could continue to get run over the short term, or more than likely just chop around. You know, maybe it gets flushed, rebounds, they try to flush it again, rebounds, forms a bottom, and then starts to grind higher. But again, the most important thing is with those March calls, you don't have to get too wrapped up and stress yourself out with the short-term price action, because that's the tough part with a lot of these things when you're buying blood. You know, they're heavy, and a lot of times you can get run over, and you know, it adds a lot of emotion to the game, even though you're that far out in calls. You know, even though you're out to March or June, still emotionally you get wrapped up where you don't want to own it. Okay, and let me tell you something. I get why they're tough, especially where the market is right now. Tough to play some of these longer term plays, but some of these elite buyers and, you know, impressive buyers with time behind them have been ridiculous. I mean, the home builders, you see this DHI? Okay, here's an example of one. This DHI caught leap action, some other action around it, but leap action. It was the summer, I think it was the summer, and had a move, but then went into some chop. Okay, but they're in leaps. They were in 2019 calls. So again, it's noise. And then, you know, you don't look at the name, right? People forget. We just stop looking at it because there hasn't been much movement, no juice in the name. Then you look at it now and look at this explosion out of there. So depending on what type of trader you are, these things, they're huge. They've been money. You guys know that name SGMS, right? That I a gazillion times. You know, that started off as sharp leap sweepers in the teens. It's 46 now, and they still got a long way to go. They're still buying and been buying up here. By the way, on that note, this is another interesting name, earnings coming. So I'm definitely going to keep an eye on this name, especially if there's any weakness. A nice little turnaround here, too. Needed to breathe. We were talking about this last week, right? Jim, I think you and I were talking about it. You can see it just got way too hot. Came in nicely, and making a nice little turn, but here's the problem, Jim, earnings. Otherwise, it looks incredible. Earnings got in the way a lot of stuff. What else? You're out of it now? Yeah, well, maybe earnings you get the opportunity. I know a lot of us are looking at earnings you get a flattish or weak reaction off it, and it would see some action come into that. Even preferably some closer in strikes, that would be nice. JCI, that was a name that had some really nice action. They went out far in time. You can see it was a grind, a grind. So sometimes the time, you don't need it, but it's nice to have it, especially if you're buying weakness. Now, a lot of these names buying weakness. Yeah, JCI has been catching a lot of flow throughout this whole move. It's just she's a really slow mover, and it turns. There's people, again, members who are in it. They're up nicely, and they still complain about it because every time it looks like it's going to get loose, boom, right? You have these things. Look, constantly. So a lot of choppiness in between. What are the leap name? I just want to make sure I throw all the leap names at you. Here's one that caught some impressive leap activity. HPE, that's the Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Another really slow mover, really slow. A lot of action it caught, though. You have earnings coming up soon. But, I doubt this can't be earnings action that far out. But you could wait. You could wait. Here's the action right here. So this is, by the way, Jan 2019. So ignore that 17. This is all 2019. And there was even more. And you could see decent size sweepers, blocks. And they piled up a good amount of these things. Those are the 17s. Jan 2019 17s, if you're curious. And this is what the name, I forgot that. This is what the name looks like. So, choppy, right? It doesn't look like anything special. But, again, maybe one of those names, like the DHI, like that Chrysler. God, no name looked more boring than this when they were buying leaps. This FCAU. They were loading up on leaps in this thing. This thing was dead as a doornail way back. And look at it now. So, again, if it depends. You're that type of trader, investor, and that's the point I try to make, with flow-wise. You don't have to trade a certain way. You don't need to mimic anybody else. You don't need to copy other people's trades. You know what I mean? You don't need to tail alerts. You figure out what style you're most comfortable with. What approach is going to allow you to have the most success depending on your schedule, your bankroll, right? Your account size, your risk, all that crap. And that's the beauty of flow. There's something for everybody. I kid you not. You're day trading. There's a certain type of flow you look at for day trading. Your swing trading. We went over this, in one of the webinars. The different types, the different stages. So if you're a longer-term swing trader or somebody who likes to build a position as well as trade aggressively over the short term, right? Maybe you want 2, 3 key positions that you're looking to build around. When I was a broker, this was the stuff I needed to look at. I needed to pay attention to. The quick stuff wouldn't do me any good because I couldn't trade that way for clients. So I had to look at, names like this FCAU, this name like HPE would be something on my radar that I would look to build a position and open new accounts. You know what I mean? So if you're that type of player, investor, or maybe you're a broker, whatever the hell you are, this flow is an idea generated just for that. All right, so again, and one more name, KKR. This is a little different. This, they already, right, I think right before the election, they bought 2019 leaps. That was back here, right? Is that the election? Yeah. So back here, and then they just piled up a whole bunch more up here. And they got earnings any day now. Maybe they came out, I don't even know. So, but this KKR, again, big action there. I'll show you guys because I know I got a couple questions on this. Hang on. All right, so I'll show you the action. Weren't they June's? Oh, no, here's the leaps. Yeah. Oh, this is 2017. Here they are, right here. So you can see this is, oh, so this is a little after the election. Looks like there was some stuff before the election, too. So you got June's and, you know, all the size. You see all the size there. This is Jan's. That's in February. Yeah, this is the stock was in the teens. What the? Hold on. And now you got Jan 2019 $22 calls. Look at the size behind those bad boys. Stock a little over 20. So just take a peek. I think if you're interested, I think they, when did they, oh, they had earnings, right? Yeah, so they had earnings. Here's the earnings. So you got a little bit, it looks like a little bit of a pullback, not much, maybe 40 cents or so. Let me turn on the fan. Hang on one second. All right, so you got earnings out of the way there if you're interested, but again, they're leaps. All right, let me get to some of your names first, and then we could go, or questions. Let me get to questions. If you have any questions about flow, shoot them out now, and then, you know, we could get into your names. We'll get into your names anyway, but if you have any questions on flow or strategy or anything like that, shoot them out now before we get wrapped up into the names. All right, and listen, I know a lot of members are in here, and I appreciate you guys always showing up. You know that. I love you guys. But you have to ask questions, okay? And I may not know the answer. You know, I don't know all the answers. But if it's a question in regards to flow and strategy, I may be able to help you out a bit as far as guiding you in the right direction of what to pay attention to, what to look for, because I've tried it all and been around professional traders who trade all flow. So I've seen what styles have worked. You know what I mean? And I'll be brutally honest with you. If I think from my experience and what I've seen in my day, you're going to have a tough time, I'm going to tell you you're going to have a tough time. You guys know that about me. All right? But if you're unsure, you have to ask. You know, a lot of, especially if you're trying to figure things out. A lot of traders think, you know, they're just going to figure things out on their own and just, you know, go out there like a cowboy shooting options. Not that easy. All right, let me start here. Karen is saying, is overall flow steady, dwindling, or increasing? Karen, what are you talking about? Are you talking about overall action? You know, if you are, it's an interesting point because we hear constantly about the volume in the overall market, how dead it is, right? We hear that constantly. And it's the opposite in the option market. So I think Karen's making that point that, you know, you look at SPY and general, I know a lot of you guys look at, and there's, you know, it's just been missing. But in the option market, there's been a ton of action, a ton of action. As a matter of fact, Um, Trade Alert, if you follow them on Twitter, they're Option Alert. And they post the volume at the end of every day. So you could get an idea. I'll give you an example. Friday, Karen, okay? There was, let's see, total preliminary option volume of 22 million, almost 40% above average. 40%. So, yes, to answer your question, the action, the overall action, it's been legit. It's been legit. And you could ask even a lot of members. We've just some of the size we've seen throughout this rally, mind-boggling, Karen, mind-boggling, just absolutely mind-boggling. Names like Micron, they're throwing around millions and millions of dollars. I mean, this stock has rallied significantly. And look at the amounts here. I don't know if you guys can see it on your screens. 150, 600, 800, 1.4 million, 800, non-stop. Like, look at this. This is Micron, just Micron. We're still in October. All this. October, look at this. $7 million block, $2 million sweep. It's incredible. So yeah, to answer your question, and I think maybe that's the point you're getting at, a lot of people talking about the volume being dead, and that may be a warning sign in the market. Not from what I'm seeing. The type of action I look for, there's big money being put to work. And yeah, the action has seen a huge pickup, especially this year, post-election. Johnson saying, I have calls that have risen by over 15%. Should I close before the earnings results? Again, this is a great, I'm glad you're asking it at the least, okay? And it depends what type of player you are. This is the point I try to make, Johnson. I don't know if I've seen you on here in the past. We had a whole webinar about this, what was it, last week or a couple of weeks ago. Before you push the button, okay, before you push the buttons out there to buy, you have to have, if not a game plan, some idea of what you're doing, what you're willing to risk on the downside, and why you're playing the name. Okay? So I gave you guys the example of like Amazon, all right? Where if you wanted to hold the original calls through, you would have to navigate around earnings. And by doing that, you take on a lot of risk. Okay, we know what Amazon did now, but of course, Amazon could have went the opposite way. We see it a lot of times. And I'll tell you, flow, I'd be the first to admit it. Flow when it comes to earnings is extremely erratic. Okay? If you play every single name that catches solid flow into earnings, I think right risk management, money management, you will make money. But you're not going to do that. And there are a lot more losers off earnings than you would normally see. So me personally, the strategy I found the most success with navigating earnings is when I have a profit, if I had the luxury of getting a profit before the quarter, I at the least will take off a chunk of risk. At the least. That's my approach. Again, the name will only matter like if let's say it's Amazon with the type of action it caught. Maybe I want to leave a little bigger runner than I normally would. That's fine. Okay, but that's the approach I would take. I would definitely trim my risk down unless you're okay with giving it all back. If you're okay with that, then that's your strategy. You understand? If you're saying you were willing for that option to go to zero, but you're not looking for 15% upside. You were looking for bigger than that. But your strategy was to let it go to zero. That was your stop loss. Then you hold it through earnings. What do you care? Let the stock be down 3,000 points. You're not going to lose any more than what you put in. That's the beauty of options. JM is saying, do you think the Mueller indictment's possible arrest will affect the market? I hope so. I hope so, JM. You're talking about a pullback? God, I hope so. I really, really do. I mean, we don't even know who it is yet. I'm sure if it's nonsense, you may get futures down and they'll buy the living piss out of it. Excuse my French. Listen, there will be a time when the music stops, okay? Usually, it comes when everything is roses, when everybody feels great, okay? People who are comparing now to 1999, in my opinion, I don't think traded through 1999. 1999, you couldn't find a person down and out if you tried hard enough. Okay, that's everybody was doing cartwheels. Not even in the market, just in general. You know, it was a good time. It was a good time. Now we got a president that's a walking wall of worry. As soon as people start to feel a little optimistic, something goes down. And there's so much hatred out there that, you know, listen, there are people who got political, and shame on them, and it has cost them a lot of money in this game. And hopefully they learned a big lesson. Hopefully you learned a big lesson. Yeah, Mandeep is saying when your Uber driver asks you, do you own Bitcoin, then it's time to sell. Yeah, we're nowhere near that. You know what I mean? We're nowhere near that euphoria stage. And I'm not saying we have to get there. We can have a correction before that, but corrections are good too. Corrections are good. I wish we'd have more corrections. I know you guys are probably thinking I'm nuts, but for me, especially if I'm a swing trader, I feel less confident buying up here. You know, I like buying when people are negged out and bearish. You know, that's where the opportunities come from. You know, here when people were talking for the death of Tech and Fang, that's where the opportunity was. You know, that's where the juice comes. Up here, chasing, this is flat out chasing here, and you have to be careful. You have to be careful. So you're asking me, I'm a day trader, so I'm a short-term trader. Will the market be affected by what's going on with the, you know, the news over the weekend here with Mueller and all that? I sure hope so. I really do. Because if we have another gap up day Monday, yeah, I'm more worried about that, if that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, Trump is trying to do everything to jinx the market. He don't shut up about it. But Jim, you got to understand, by the time he gets out of here, this thing is probably going to be in shambles. He's probably got a ticking time bomb and he don't even know about it. All right? So, but timing is everything. Timing's everything. Yeah, Manafort or Flynn. I mean, I don't know. If it's Manafort, I don't know. Again, for me, it's this simple. Okay, I'm gonna come in Monday morning, and I'm sure futures will probably be a little red. I'm sure, and I'm just gonna pay attention to the flow. That's what I'm gonna look at. If they're buying into that red. I'm not even listening to what's going on CNBC, or, they're coming after Trump next, or whatever nonsense they're trying to push into my mind. If the board looks like this into Weakness Monday, I'm going to be buying and I'm going to be bullish. Yeah, Young is asking, how is retail sentiment? Hot. It's a bit hot here. For the first time, Young, since this most recent rally. So in other words, this leg higher, this move, this is the first time we got retail sentiment on the hot side. Believe it or not, I know it sounds crazy, throughout this whole move, it wouldn't go past neutral. It's been dead neutral. It's been dead neutral. But we've been seeing it in other things too. If you look at like a put to call, the put to call was elevated throughout a lot of this move. That hedge fund exposure thing I mentioned, they were selling throughout this move. So a lot of the sentiment lined up in our favor while the market was strong. So now for the first time, it is on the other side. So again, it makes sense with the tech blowout, popular names, right? FANG and so forth. So, it doesn't mean we can't continue to grind higher, but a lot of times what will happen, eventually there will be a wash that wipes out that grind. That's what usually happens. So in other words, I'll give you an example. I'm trying to think, where's a wash? It was probably somewhere around here. Like, for example, sentiment, let's say, got too hot around here, continue to grind higher, but eventually you get a wash that wipes out that whole grind. So that's just something to take into consideration. You want to be quick. We've been talking about this a while, guys. You don't want to get caught heavy long up here and get caught in the wash. You don't want to do that. You got enough action out there, enough movers. You had earnings too, so that would make you even more selective. Where you can find a that has solid action, play it. You make money or you get stopped out. Look for something else. That type thing. You don't need to go and put on 7, 8 long call positions and then get caught in a wash and you knocked out. So that's the way I would play it. Any action in Expedia drop? No. I thought there would be too. I was hoping for maybe a little less. I hate the heavy selling like that because I like to give that a couple of days. Here's the where is it here? The Expedia action, there was nothing, in other words, that we saw that had everything expired. I think the Jans that were one of the first bets, and it was a good-looking one. They're the only ones that have a possibility of still being open, and who knows. But we'll see. I'm sure we'll see action eventually. I'm sure we'll see action. I was hoping for weakness, and not that much weakness. It caught action, Expedia. After this pull, we saw action down here. Had a nice little move, and then you ran into earnings. By the way, here's a good example. Again, they expired, but just use it as an example anyway. Okay? I forgot who asked the question. Here's a good example, though. We saw Expedia flow, right, into the bottom of this range here. So let's say you make a play. Earnings are coming here, right? Navigate earnings, but you got time. You get a nice move. I mean, this is a tradable move. You're talking about 141 to 154. Okay? Now you go into earnings. That's where if you want to leave a runner, you take risk off, because what happens when this happens? You understand? Again, unless you're okay with it going to zero. But for every Amazon, you have stuff like this. And you got to plan for it. What else? You guys can throw names at me too while we're at it here. MB saying, does the traffic in the index futures indicate market strength too, or is it more short term? What do you mean, futures? I don't follow futures too much. Are you talking about index options, or you're just talking about futures in general? I mean, basically, I concentrate on one type of flow, MB, and that's equity ETF. Honestly, for the most part, sweeper activity. I'm not even really paying attention to too much of the other stuff. VIX, I follow VXX a little, I follow VXX. When I see put sweepers in VXX, I get excited. But I don't follow VIX too much or anything like that. Let's see here. Steven's asking about AMD. We'll get to a couple names. This is tricky here. This is tricky because you had some really nice flow. You had earnings. There's been action, but nothing crazy. Let me show you. Nothing that I'm impressed with. Hold on. And AMD has been active for quite a bit. You see, AMD, you remember, I thought maybe they would have a good quarter. It was the total opposite. So again, it goes to show you earnings, they work both ways. Here's the action post earnings. You see, this is peanuts. I'm not impressed by this. So the ideal setup for AMD would be find a bottom, hang around. I want the flow to go quiet, or at least light. You know what I mean? Where we're not paying attention to it, and then they pick up the pace. Then we see call sweepers come in aggressively. That would signal to me this thing is ready for a squeeze. And listen, I don't think AMD is dead, by no means. A lot of the stuff, if you remember, I was telling you, they pushed out. They pushed further out in time. So this is not dead at all. But I think as far as an entry here, you want to see it go dead a little bit, and then the action to pick up in velocity like it does. Remember AMD, I was telling you, like on these pullbacks, you have the action go quiet, and then all of a sudden, sweepers start coming in right at the bottom of these things, coincidentally. And then you get that move. So that's what I would be looking at. It's just obviously the pullback's been a little bigger, but you had earnings. Gilead, yes. It's funny you asked that. Gilead did have a buyer yesterday. Gilead is officially one of my most hated stocks on the face of the earth. That's just me. Maybe this has a lot to do with it, this downtrend. But Gilead did catch a buyer. Hold on, I'll get them for you. And it had earnings, right? Young Gilead, earnings are done. So at least you got that out of the way. Oh, Gilead. Been some put buying, but that was earnings too. Here's the buyer here. November 77's quarter size suite. You see it there? This guy. So decent size sweeper. You would like to see them come back, preferably. That's a big preference of mine. I like to see them come again, right? If they like it, they should come again. But you got a size sweep. If you were looking at the name, I sound like a broken record, but you guys have heard this throughout many webinars. If if you like the name and looking for an entry, and you wanted to use sweepers as confirmation, as an indicator, that's your confirmation. A lot of traders, a lot of members use it that way. So yeah, caught some decent action. Tesla, this is another one earnings is going to ruin, in my opinion, but it already has. Tesla, I was looking for sweepers, you guys know. It's been quiet. She's been dead. I like this, choppy, frustrate the retail player all day long type of thing. Caught a nice sweep. It caught a real nice sweep. The problem is, you know the problem. You know the problem. What's the problem? Earnings. You got earnings. When's it? Next week? Wednesday? Tuesday? So, yeah, that's the problem. Here's the Tesla order. And it looked like somebody bought weeklies to get exercise, so he's probably getting long the stock on Friday. Oh, here it is, right on the top. 11.3 and $976,000 sweep, so almost $1 million sweep. So here's an example. If this bet, right, doesn't catch earnings, I love it. But that's a big if. So again, if you're an earnings player, you can roll the dice and take a shot. It's a good looking order. But if you're not, you got to take it down. You got to take it down a notch, because it takes that's a blemish. You can see here there's size put action too. That was, and that's into earnings. So you see my point, guys. You see my point. I mean, so what would be the ideal setup in Twitter? Tesla, Jesus, in Tesla, stock, let's say, is weak off earnings, comes back, and bounces. I don't want to see that heavy weakness per se, and for it to stay weak. Maybe bounces, shows some buying coming in, and we see flow. Or even it play dead from there for a week, and then we see flow. But, earnings, I tell you, they ruin a lot of things. I showed you two stocks that caught even better looking action for that particular name, the Dynergy, that, you had to take it down a notch because it could have been earnings flow. But it is what it is. I know this. See, I know from my experience, if I totally avoid earnings, when I see quality action, I'm going to be extremely confident. So that's what you need to tell yourself if you're trading off low. If you play the best of the best, and it doesn't have earnings involved, you should be able to find a lot of success. All right, and then you're going to mix in some of the other stuff. Hopefully it'll even itself out, or maybe take a little bit of the juice off the quality stuff. And that's how you become a profitable trader. But you have to avoid things where your edge becomes a little dull, and earnings is one of them. Chris is saying he expects an Amazon move after Tesla earnings. I mean, yeah, we can all guess. But again, you can't, as far as the action's concerned, you can't compare Amazon to Tesla flow-wise. You're talking apples and oranges here. First of all, there's some size put buying, and then you got one call sweeper here. These expired. So you got one call sweeper here for, and this is another thing. Free catches earnings by a day, I think, right? So it tells you he's targeting earnings. That's what it tells you there. It's an earnings play. Amazon, I mean, come on. You can't compare it. You can't compare it. Look at these monsters. Look at this monster. You can't compare it. I would love to get you guys gassed up on Tesla. It may have the other characteristics, but flow-wise, no comparison. You know, and this guy right here is the king in my book. I sent out a tweet yesterday. What was his night like last night? What was this guy doing last night? That's what I want to know. That's all I want to know. What do you think he does after a hit like that? The calls, by the way, a lot of you probably saw me posted on Twitter. They closed at 147. He paid 35. 35. These. They closed at 147. And, you know, we're not talking about the other action that came around it. There was a December guy, too, that was the size of the Tesla guy that we ignore. We're not even talking about. So, yeah, it's... See, that's a... Again, that we could get into as traders. You catch one like this, and then now you're looking for the next Amazon, right? Don't do that. Don't do that. The Amazon, again, the biggest sweeper I've seen since I've been doing this. So you can't, we might not see another Amazon for, well, who knows? In this market, you never know. But yeah, so that's the problem with Tesla. Again, I like the sweep. If it didn't have earnings, I wouldn't be shutting up about it, you know, and I'd be urging members to look to take advantage of it. But it's an earnings play. It's an earnings play. Yeah, Baba, I mentioned earlier on, Philip, I don't know if you were there. I day traded Baba Friday morning just because you could see it develop. It was crystal clear. You know, Amazon, they were buying, again, you know, small momentum sweepers out of the gate. They were buying the Intels. They were buying all the strong names. Then they hit Facebook. Then they started hitting Baba. And Baba had a wash. This is what was great about Baba. Baba had a wash at the open. It didn't gap up. So once you started seeing the flow come in, I mean, it was just picture perfect. You know, picture perfect. Again, for a lot of us day traded it, and you have earnings coming up, and Baba, like a lot of these hot names, has, I mean, caught ridiculous amount of action. I mean, look at all this action in Baba. You know, the bets here and there. Look at all this green though, and you could go back. Look at protection, right? 16,000, 64,000, $1 million sweep here. October's those expired. You know, so you could go back a long time and see a ton of Baba flow. So my take is on names like this, that when you see a name that has rallied this hard, this much, you look for action to come in. What the hell did I do here now? I can't get to. You look for action to come in on pullbacks. You know, so you get a dip here. You look for action to come in. You got to trade. Dip. Look for action to come in. You got to trade. You got earnings there too, by the way. You got earnings, right? When's earnings in Baba? That should be coming up. You know what? I told you a spec play that looked interesting. I think I told you guys. This ZTO. Did I tell you guys about this name? I think so, right? They are basically, in simple English, the FedEx for Baba and JD. So I don't, obviously Baba, I guess the numbers will have an effect. You have Singles Day too, right? Coming up, which would be a hot thing for this. So this is ZTO is the symbol. There was unusual activity in the Jan calls. This name, I mean, is fairly new. They came public not too long ago, so I've never seen action in this name. ZTO. Yeah, GBT is top shelf action there. How about that shake and bake? You believe this? There was some news on GBT, okay? And I don't swing trade much. I own leaps. So, make a long story short, I want to add to those, not leaps, March calls, I'm sorry, whatever. But for me, that's leaps. So I wanted to add. I don't have a full position. I wanted to add on a pullback. Because this thing was a little bit on the hotter side when action came in. I don't know if you guys remember me telling you. You could see here, a little hot. So I was hoping to catch a full pullback. So I come in, I turn on the monitors in the morning. I see down 5. Okay. So I'm like, all right, we got some weakness here. This thing moves. This thing can move. You can see, it went from 25 to 35 in a couple weeks. So down 5, I come in. I'm looking to add to my position. I left some room to add. Make a long story short, now we're getting ready to open down 4. By the time we open down 3, snap of a finger, it's down 50 cents. They swallowed up down 5 like you couldn't imagine. Inhaled. It was a mirage. Ask me how much I got. 0. I didn't get to buy any. That's how quick it was. Because as soon as the market opened, boom, down 2, down 1, down 50 cents. Now I'm like, this thing just ran $5. Now I'm going to buy it down 50 cents? I just saw it down 5 minutes ago. And then she pushed higher since then. So this is something to keep an eye on. It is a biotech, so it's always dangerous, and anytime you play these things, you gotta understand that whatever you put in, you gotta be willing to lose, that type of thing, because it's a biotech. Okay, just like it was down 5, they can catch FDA denial, and this thing can crap out. Okay, but it's the best action on the board right now. Best action. The type of sweeper activity that came into this, hands down the best action on the board. So, like I say, and if you remember, win or lose, if you trade off wise guy activity, you have to own this thing. Okay? You can't be scared of losing. If you lose, it's fine. There's going to be a loser. There's going to be a loser no matter what. There's no way you can get in a name and say to yourself, all right, this will never be a loser. There's no such thing. So when you see that type of action, you got to find a way to own it, in my opinion. Anytime you see that type of action, that's Amazon. Amazon, we've seen it in several names. None of the names are at entries anymore. They're all gone. This is the only one left right now. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the options, they're buying the March calls. Oh, you're saying the stock didn't move when it pulled back? The calls didn't move? The market, as soon as the market opened, it bounced. So, but they're in March. And as a matter of fact, what caught my eye was the deep in the money activity that it caught. Not even the out of the money activity. I'll show you guys quickly. Yeah, you won't even see it on the board. On the board, you got this here. $1 million block, right? But this is what caught my eye. Let me do this. And it caught a little bit of action after. Oh, come on, Twitter. I can't go back. This is the small sweep it caught after the significant ones. You believe this? This Twitter will drive you nuts. I'm telling you, it will drive you nuts. You see what I mean? Now I can't even go back far enough to see those things. It gets in its moods. Oh, here it is. Thank God. That's the. I showed you guys this. You remember this action? This guy. This guy. This guy. Right? Small lots, right? Ah, what a piker. Meanwhile, that's a $500,000 sweep. Another one. Here's another 230 grand. So yeah, that's what caught my eye. You know, this block is a block. It's big, fine, that's great. This is the action I like right here. So, like I said, a name definitely to keep an eye on. They're in March calls. There's a lot of time there. But like I said, at the least, if you're a player off, what the hell did I do? If you're that doesn't look good at all. If you're a player off flow, you have to own it. You have to own it. Win or lose, you have to own it. Same thing went for Amazon. You know, even that Yandex, which again I don't swing much. I had that for a swing. Back when they were the way they came after it, you had to own it. You know, that exploded. I think it was 2 days later, but they've been rolling a lot of the Yandex out. Sort of been doing a whole lot of nothing here. But she had a killer move. It doesn't even look that big now, but this was the move in Yandex. They were buying. They started buying here, and then they went nuts here. They went nuts. So you know that type of buying is special. And FTR, yeah, I'm not. It's not even on my radar. Does it have FTR? Is there earnings there? What is this? You got earnings coming up. 11/7 earnings. They're probably related to that in FTR. You know, that's another thing. You see a lot of names that every quarter they catch flow. You know, it's just earnings flow. You know, LC, you ever hear that LC Lending Club? Always catches, what is this thing? Always catches flow around earnings. And usually does nothing or shits the bed. Maybe one day it'll do something, but I don't want to bank on that one day. Yeah, Yelp. Somebody asked Yelp. Yelp caught another buyer on Friday. 11,349 calls caught a sweep. They went bonkers on Yelp earlier in the year. But you had a sweep, 11,349 calls. Mr. Ranchero, yeah, we were just talking about MDLZ. Ton of action. But again, earnings play. Earnings play. Earnings are coming up when? When did we say, Ranchero, earnings? 11 November something, right? And there, 11/3, so that's not too far away. You know, so a great sign for MDLZ would be, again, they buy post earnings. That will tell you that all that buying was not earnings related, right? If they wanted it that badly and it was clean pre-earnings, then if the stock is up a little, down a little, sideways, or down a lot, they'll want even more if it wasn't an earnings play. Yeah, no, I know, Ranchero. I mean, we talk about this MDLZ all the time, so I was just pointing it out to a couple of guys, the difference between just earnings action and, the clean stuff. And it could cost you both ways, And listen, it would be less frustrating if all the earnings flow was a loser. I would love that, right? I would just stay away from earnings flow. But the problem is it's not. Sometimes it costs you some really nice winners, like this Dynergy. That's the most frustrating part about earnings flow. You never know for sure, and it's not that they're always losers. Like I said, I think there's more winners than losers, net. But we're picking and choosing. And if there's more losers than usual, there's a lot of luck in the equation that you can step on a couple losers. That's all. Yeah, Twitter has seen an uptick in activity even before earnings. And now the stock has just exploded. So you got to let this thing breathe. Like IBM, I got a lot of questions on the IBM. IBM caught a sweep, by the way, won. But you want to see a breather like IBM, and then you can look at it. What are you going to do with Twitter now? What are you going to do with this? You're going to buy here? I mean, you could go higher, but you don't want to get in the habit of buying this. Again, if you're day trading, short-term trading, like Friday, I didn't trade it, but there was heat. There was some Twitter heat in the morning where you could have got in the middle for a day trade. But to swing it, I wouldn't do it up here. Apple, they went bananas on Friday in Apple. But again, when is Apple earnings? Look at Apple. And you can see, and a lot of stuff on here a lot of the stuff isn't even on here Thursday after the close. So you have earnings there. A lot of the stuff is not even on here as far as those small algo type sweeps that really got this thing going. But you had some hefty action come in. But you see all these 1027, 1027, 1027. Those were just algos firing one after another that I was telling you guys about at the beginning of the webinar. So as a day trader, you want to try to get, if you guys are members or whatever the case, you want to try to get in the middle of that. When you first start to see the action pick up, if you're going to play it, that's where you play it, unless you get a fade or something like that. But when you see that type of buying, it's going to create some nice upward momentum. It's just, that's what happens. So same thing, Apple, you had a little wash early on, and then as the sweepers came in, like I said, it started off gradual, and then one after the other, and then before you know it, she was gone. Whoop. Like what happened was there was a sweeper early, then there was another one. It was like sort of sporadic, and then all of a sudden, it was like what, 11 o'clock-ish? Whoop! They just started firing. You can see here, one after the other after the other. So 160.35 all the way up to 163. Yeah, Microsoft, same thing. Microsoft was catching a We'll see in open interest how much of it rolls. But Microsoft buyers on Friday into the strength. Amazing. You know what's even more amazing was the Intel. Because I said to myself, if Intel is up on this number, I mean, after that move in Intel, and don't get me wrong, I love Intel. I love the flow in Intel. Everything about Intel would look great. I'm just saying into earnings, it already had a monster move and still went higher. Like Microsoft up here now, to me, it's dead. It's dead. As far as a swing trade, a position trade, this is where you're holding your position, holding runners and stuff like that, in my opinion. Intel, same thing. Look at this move in Intel. And this thing, was in consolidation here for so long. This is what we were talking about. This whole sideways, long, dead move. This thing's been dead forever. And then finally got out, and the flow just exploded in Intel. But you can see, even overheated, right? Just continue to push higher. Not much pullback at all. So, it gets tough for me, names up here like this. Like I said, now you're looking for other entries, third, fourth, fifth entries in a name that's been running. So you're looking for some sort of consolidation again, pullback, and then some flow to come in. But to me, again, you're just looking for a trade out of that. The big move, from here you're looking for a big move. We got to go parabolic for that to happen. Yeah, Cisco, a little bit of flow. Nothing really too crazy. When they have earnings or no? Or they had them? No, they have earnings, right? Oh, they had it in August? But Cisco, a little bit of flow. Nothing too exciting. Airlines, sort of been mixed. On Friday, I think Delta. It was Delta that caught some action, and LUV, a little action into the pullback. LUV just had earnings. So a little buying post earnings in LUV. Priceline, a lot of members traded this thing pre-earnings, caught a weekly sweep into this weakness here, and had a real nice move. A lot of people flipped it the same day. But other than that, Priceline, very rare. Very rare to catch sweeper activity. That's why a lot of people played it that day. Even though it was weeklies, it was a nice trade. Yeah, so we got a lot of earnings, and if you see action in earning names, in names that have earnings, the prudent approach would be to keep an eye on it and see. Maybe you get a better price, and maybe they come back and it's even a stronger signal. Otherwise, if it's longer term flow and you have to sit through an earnings, let's say, and you feel like it's worth it, buy a piece and then leave some room to add to it if you decide to add to it. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't add to it. But leave some room and have some time on your side. But just in general here, you just, again, it doesn't have to be a huge correction, but you're better off waiting for a wash. It can come intraday. Like we said, it could be Monday off this Mueller nonsense, right? You get a wash, and for me, if I see buying into that wash, that can create an opportunity to trade. Other than that, as a short-term trader, you want to look to take advantage of moves like this. So in other words, take your profit, take off some risk, if you're a short-term trader. And like I said, some of the sentiment stuff I look at, I wouldn't say they're all overheated, but as close to overheated as we've seen in this rally. Every time they had a chance for it to get to this point where we are now, there was always some sort of like little pull intraday or sideways. We got a little sideways here, and believe it or not, sucked out a lot of the bulls. These little fades here suck out a lot of the bulls. People, the retail crash quickly. That's one thing I've been telling you guys. They get bearish quickly. It doesn't take much. You'd be shocked how quick. And you got to understand something. And that's why you ignore put buying now. Not ignore it, but you don't pay attention to the majority of put buying now because there is so much protection being bought out there. Everybody who's even getting long is buying protection. So people are lathering up in protection on any little pullback. A lot of times the market, won't blow up, or you won't see anything significant when people are protected, right? It usually happens when people don't have protection on. So that's why when we see the sentiment stuff get a little too frothy, like it is now, be careful because it tells you they can catch the bulls if they want them. Right now they can catch the bulls if they want them. If we get a little weakness Monday, you'll see, whoop, here comes a rush into protection. You see the put the call spike. We see that retail squeezometer that members know what I'm talking about. We see that move back under neutral. And then the music lives on. But when they get a little too hot, it's a good time to take some risk off the table and, rein it in a bit. JD, I haven't seen anything since the action, well, it didn't expire, they rolled it out. They rolled out those calls when we were talking, if you guys remember. So basically, they bought this dip, had a little pop, move higher. Then you remember this was the weekend, last weekend, or the weekend before, where they bought that. They caught some news and barons, had a pop, and into this pop, they rolled out those calls. They pushed them out, in other words. I haven't seen much action into this weakness. I haven't seen much there. You got earnings coming up too, JD, I'm sure, right? November 21st. So, like I said, even if you're playing earnings, you want to stick to the best of the best. You really do. Fresh flow, new flow, that type of action. You don't want to rely on, so-and-so caught flow last month. They're probably going to have a good quarter. We had no idea what they did with those calls a couple weeks ago, a month ago. You see, if you're going to play earnings, again, if you're committed, you're playing earnings, I would stick to the best action out there, the freshest action out there, and just understand there's going to be losers. There's nothing you could do. Earnings is a crapshoot. There are a lot of losers there. Again, there's winners as well. And you know what I'm noticing too? Because, again, a lot of option players that are new to options don't pay attention to it. You got to understand implied and all that. Sometimes you're right on earnings, the stock goes up, and you're still not making money. You got to understand that. And what I've realized is, a lot of the names that are unpopular that catch flow into earnings end up faring the best. They're still losers, but the winners are greater than the losers, you know, as opposed to if you buy a name that's all juiced up already and you need a huge move just for you to be profitable. These option guys are smart guys, man. They factor in a lot of juice. You know, sometimes you catch them off guard, but that's because usually the public is on the other side. All right. Any last questions? Flow questions? Anybody members or curious about anything? Shoot them out now. Again, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Don't be embarrassed to ask any question at all. That's the only way you're going to learn anything in this game. Is asking, do I think Facebook ran too far ahead of November 1st earnings? I'm in the Jan 190s and in the few. Yeah, I would put it this way. I would look to take off some risk, especially if you're profitable on anything going into a quarter. You know, I mean, it's just a tough call. Like I said, Intel, which I said to myself, there's no way this thing could go higher. How good does the quarter have to be for Intel to have a big enough move for it to be worth it, right? Risk-reward wise. That's how you got to look at it. Risk-reward wise. Can it have a big enough move? And I said to myself, there's just no way, even with all the flow it caught, look at this run. And it did. Okay, but I still would look at stuff the same way. I said it about PayPal into the quarter. It gapped up. Other stuff, it didn't, like Netflix. I said the same thing about Netflix, and they sold it off on earnings. So, but me personally, anytime, Brent, when you get a move, like Facebook still can grind higher into the quarter, but if you're talking about holding into numbers, if you got some profits there, I would take the prudent approach, And here's the thing you got to understand too. If you're in any of these closer duration type strikes, right, weeklies, front month, you got to be careful too. Even playing the grind, any little wash will wipe out a lot of your juice. A lot of your juice. So that's why, Brent, and again, it's just a preference of mine, when I get days like this, I look to trim at the least profits. Again, if you're in leaps and you're saying, I have a year out and I'm willing to sit through, that's a different story. But if you're in a month or two out, a couple of weeks out, and you're really not in the mood to lose those profits, you gotta utilize days like this to take off risk. You want to give it an extra day, see if there's a follow through on top of that. You're willing to give some back. You're really willing to give a little bit of the profits back if it pulls. That's okay, but that's me personally. Groupon is strange. Groupon was seeing bullish flow. What was it? September. So over here, Groupon was acting well, seeing bullish flow. Then all of a sudden, there was put action that started flying in here. Let me show you. This is, Groupon. I'm sorry. I'm thinking GoPro. My bad. Sorry, Randy. GoPro I was talking about. Yeah, Groupon caught this bet here. So the Jan 5s, a block. Does this stock even move? I remember when I saw that bet, I'm like, this stock, every time I look, it's like $4. But it did catch a big block. They have earnings? I'm sure they do, right? MB is asking, can members keep a watch list on the site? I don't know what you mean by watch list, but I mean, basically, let me hit on this. I usually hit on it at the beginning, but I forgot this time around. Too busy talking about the market and Amazon. All right, very simply put, we offer a couple things. Now we got a new 3-day trial, free. Okay, you don't even have to put your credit card. You don't have 100% full access, meaning you're not going to get private Twitter, and you're not going to be able to post commentary, talk to others, but you'll be able to see the flow and all the features. And the features are, you get this search feature. So, right, anytime you want to see any action and catch up on it. By the way, this was the best. This was the Facebook bet that I traded off of. See, every time I go into this, I start going into stocks again. I can't help myself. But this was the Facebook bet that got me going cuckoo for a day trade. There were, right before this, they were playing some weeklies expiring yesterday, right at the open. So Facebook had some juice, and then this missile came in. And again, the question I asked myself, can this momentum now? I don't care about anything else. If the answer is yes, can I see momentum out of that order flow now? I'm putting on a day trade. So that, with the weeklies that came in on the Facebook early on, I ended up taking a spin, and was a nice trade. You can see right off the bat, 9 into this, if you could see it, that little pause, and then just exploded. Yeah, so here, little pop, then right into this thing. That's when that big guy came in, and then look at that move. That was just a beautiful thing right there. So back to the sales aspect. So yeah, here's what we offer. So we got the free 3-day trial. You get access to everything in here, but you can't post and you don't get private Twitter. The live feed you'll get, this is basically me screen sharing my charts, what I'm looking at, and commentary on all the activity as it comes in. So when a Sharpie comes in, you can ask members, you'll sense it in my voice because I'm excited. I'm probably making a play myself, and you'll be able to hear and see that, okay? So that's the best feature of the Steamroom, obviously. Also, you get access to this search. You can find any of the flow you missed or go back and double check. Another huge plus is this reference price, which tells you where the stock was when the action started to heat up. It gives you a good indication, you know, of maybe finding an entry. We got the heat. So let's say technology, you're looking for the tech sector, and you want to see what names caught flow. You click on it, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and it tells you the sum of the bets and how many bets there were and stuff like that. All right. And then you got access to all these rooms. This is the main chat. Everybody in here talking about what they're trading in real time, off the flow, all different styles, all different types of traders, from futures to stocks to options, day trading, swing trading, investing, you name it, all different types. All right. If you feel that's a lot of noise, you click on the filter tab, and basically you would just get my commentary on the order flow. All right. So anything I share, and you will have access to that. If you don't, you know, a lot of people keep that open with that, so you can see both. All right, and then you got access to the other rooms. You got Lucci's in here talking about what he's playing. Then Lucci will hop in there after hours, talk some Bitcoin, crypto. Market updates is where I post all the sentiment stuff, recap of action, all that jazz. Off topic, people can run their mouth about politics. We want no politics in here at all. Can't make any money off that. All right, the webinars, you can access all that stuff in there. All right, so that's what you're going to get a feel for in the 3-day trial. Then also we got the 50% off the first month. That you will get everything, included private Twitter, and you can ask questions and post. Also, if you're just interested in the private Twitter, just the private Twitter, we spun that off by itself for $60 a month, $59.99. You get the private Twitter feed. The private Twitter feed, again, is included in the premium membership too. The private Twitter feed is all the flow in real time. Same shit. Obviously, the most important thing you're not getting is the live audio and other traders sharing their styles, and Lucci in here telling you what he's playing. Lucci is a solid options trader, man. You don't find too many of those. Trading options, and Lucci will share with everybody constantly what he's in, what he's buying, what he's looking to buy, how he's managing positions, and so on. You can learn a lot. So if you're looking to learn a particular style and strategy, I sound like a salesman. I hope you guys understand. I'm not trying to be an ass about it, but I think you should start here at the least. Again, you can ask the questions. You got people to learn off of. A lot of different traders in here who are in here all day long during market hours. This is what they do for a living. Those are the guys you're going to learn off of. But again, if you have a strategy and you're just looking off the flow, private Twitter is definitely suitable for you. All the action in real time, open interest, sentiment stuff, not posted. Sometimes I post it during market hours, but at the close and before the market and stuff like that. Brent is saying, I can't do live audio from my job, but I'm making good use of Twitter. So there you go. Brent has been a member. I know Brent, good guy, trades options, does well. Out of Seattle, right, Mr. Taylor? I think he's out of Seattle. I want to go down there and see a Mariner game for ages now. But he's on the. Oh, you're in Northern Virginia? Oh, I didn't know that. But he's on private Twitter. He knows what he's doing. He's got the. He uses the flow for a certain strategy. Hey, a Nats game. All right, I'll do a Nats game. They're a fun team to watch. Frustrating for you, I'm sure, but. So there's a perfect example. So depending on and what you're trying to do here, is basically close enough to that is basically the decision you got to make. But if you're new, like I said, learning off the new traders and the audio will help you get the ball rolling in how to utilize this flow. Because throughout the day I'm stressing what action I feel sharpest, the most aggressive. You get the idea from private Twitter in a sense, but just not the same feel. A lot of people say they sense it in my voice when I'm screaming out order flow, because I'm here all day, guys. I mean, I'm passionate about this. I love it. I love it. And you're staring at the flow all day long, not some scan, just the flow, the whole entire flow, and seeing everything happen in real time. So, and I share all that with members. All right, so if you guys have any questions, you know where to hit me up. Otherwise, go to just wallstreetjesus.com, and honestly, you'll probably get all the answers there. Go to strategy, and there's a couple quick blogs on everything you need to know, from simple sweeps to using the flow for sentiment reasons, how to use the information, looking for big moves, forget about just looking for stock picks, all that stuff. Right? I appreciate you guys coming out, as always, on a Saturday. Let's hope next week, market-wise, can be as exciting as this one closed out. We'll see how Monday turns out with the Washington crap. But hopefully a little weakness, and let's see, they'll probably scoop it up in a heartbeat anyway. All right, guys, I appreciate it. Thanks. Enjoy the weekend. Be good.